Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Phil and welcome to Grounded Episode 1, my new series which looks at airlines of yesteryear. This pilot episode will take a look at Excalibur Airways. Excalibur launched in 1992 from the ashes of Trans-European Airways which had folded in September 1991. It was partially owned by 5 directors along with Air Malta and the investment company 3i. The new airline would be based at East Midlands Airport and received its first free aircraft that April. Excalibur was the first UK charter airline to use the Airbus A320 fly-by-wire aircraft. A fourth A320 was delivered in December 1992 and in March 1994 Excalibur leased a single Boeing 737-300. 1995 was a big year for Excalibur with their Airbus fleet almost doubling in size to 7 aircraft with the addition of 3 more A320s. The airline had grown a good reputation as a full-service charter airline, and as it was not affiliated with any major tour operators, it made Excalibur an ideal choice for the smaller travel companies. The airline's initial bases were at East Midlands Airport, London Gatwick, Manchester Airport, and operated flights to Spain, Greece, Italy, Turkey, Egypt and Israel. In November 1995, Excalibur was sold to the Globespan Group. Globespan were a Scottish-based tour operator which was struggling to compete with the Big Six. They needed seats and Excalibur was ripe for the taking, effectively turning from an independent airline to an in-house carrier overnight and limiting the options for the other independent travel firms. Excalibur had already begun to reduce its Airbus fleet due to a downturn in demand for short-haul routes in the mid-90s and began 1996 with just 4 A320s. Globespan, however, had ambition. They were a long-haul company and wanted Excalibur to focus on long-haul routes, so they began plans for expansion. They set their date for the launch of the long-haul programme for May 1996, with 2 McDonnell Douglas DC-10s and a third planned for an autumn arrival. Excalibur wound up its short-haul flying in March 1996, with its final A320 leaving in mid-April. You may notice I've not mentioned the arrival of a long-haul aircraft yet, and that's because they didn't have any. Globespan had rushed into things trying to compete on the lucrative UK to Florida market at the height of the 90s boom, and it was struggling to source aircraft, not that it stopped them selling the flights. May came and Excalibur still hadn't found an aircraft, any aircraft in fact, so had to resort to sub-chartering from any airline with spare birds. A DC-10 finally arrived in June, having been leased from the Belgian airline Skyjet. Well, actually, it was their offshoot based in Antigua. But either way, Excalibur finally had a wide body, and in hindsight they probably wish they hadn't bothered. The DC-10 really was the beginning of the end for Excalibur. It was supposed to be a stopgap measure until they could get hold of their own DC-10s, but all it did was stop the airline dead in its tracks. The Antigua-registered DC-10 had some reliability issues. Some were almost expected given it was a new type for the airline, but aside from the delays it plodded on until one day in Orlando. Boarding hadn't even begun for the Manchester-bound aircraft when 2 fire engines raced over to it. When passengers finally were able to board, they found ripped carpets, broken and missing tray tables, and cabin lighting that constantly flickered like in a bad movie. The aircraft eventually pushed back and made its way towards the runway before smoke was seen coming from the air conditioning, forcing the plane back to the gate once more. The passengers were sent back to the departure lounge whilst the engineers tried to find the problem and eventually gave it the all clear. 91 passengers, however, protested and stayed behind. The passengers' concerns were hardly unfounded considering the crash of the Value Jet aircraft less than a month earlier because of a fire on board. Initially, the airline refused to assist the passengers who had stayed behind. However, following considerable negative publicity in the UK, Excalibur finally relented and arranged flights for the 54 passengers who hadn't found their own flights home. The airline, however, was not sympathetic, and to quote an airline spokesman, "We have no responsibility for these passengers who decided on their own not to take the flight. These people brought all their troubles upon themselves." The British press jumped on this story, and within a fortnight, Excalibur was no more. So what caused such a promising upstart airline to fail? Well, I'd say it was a takeover by a very inexperienced company that suddenly wanted to change the entire direction of the airline with no real forward planning. They dropped their entire short-haul network, which was profitable and could have given them a much-needed bit of cash flow. They then launched a long-haul program at short notice, and from my experience in the travel industry, I can tell you that a summer or winter season program is launched over a year in advance. This was their biggest mistake. Having sold all these holidays but not having any suitable aircraft forced their management into a corner. Subleasing aircraft is very expensive and it certainly wouldn't have been sustainable, but it forced them to take any old plane, and boy did they pick the wrong one. It is unfair to put all the blame on the DC-10. Following a very brief stint in Venezuela, it entered service with Continental Airlines and operated well into the 2000s. The maintenance of the Skyjet DC-10 was undertaken by British Airways engineers, so hardly a bunch of cowboys. Yes, the DC-10's infamous Florida passenger mutiny was the final nail in the coffin, but at the same time, Excalibur was trying to compete in a very oversaturated market, back when all bar one of the big six operated to Florida, so competition was fierce, and gaining a bad reputation was not good for them. In the end, Excalibur was a very promising little airline, one of many charter airlines of Britain which came and went so quick they're hardly remembered. Except in Excalibur's case, people do remember. They just remember the headlines of holiday jet horror and passenger mutiny, which is unfair as they did start off so well. So what happened to Globespan? Well, after they pulled the plug on Excalibur, they went very quiet until 2002, when they launched their own airline, which is an episode all in itself. Until next time, thanks for watching, and please comment and let me know what you thought of this episode, along with suggestions as to what I should change for in future episodes of Grounded. Heck, maybe even subscribe for future episodes, as well as regular plane videos and other bits I've got in the pipeline.